can you share any specific tools or maybe practices or examples that have enhanced teamwork across maybe different disciplines within the firms that you work with, like PVE, and how, these tools can help AEC professionals streamline their project coordination?
I think that some of the things we've mentioned around the single source of truth is, as a sort of a paradigm shift, is the most important part. And being able to know where to go to find that information and putting the information you need in the hands of the people who need it. A lot of the examples.
There are so many different software platforms out there available to AEC firms today. You could get pulled in a million directions. Well, in this episode, I have with me two professionals that are working together to implement kind of one software platform for a firm that's been super successful. I have with me today Jamison Morse, licensed PE, registered architect, principal and director of buildings and structures at PVE-LLC, and Alan Mabry, co-founder of Turbine Workforce. And Turbine is helping PVE to build a software platform to kind of help them with all things related to their workflow and beyond. And in this episode, they're going to dive in and they're going to help us understand how kind of one source of truth for all of your software needs can be really beneficial in growing your firm. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guests onto the show for today. Jamison Morse is a licensed professional engineer and registered architect, principal and director of buildings and structures at PVE. And Alan Mabry is the co-founder of Turbine Workforce. Jamison, Alan, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Great to be here, Anthony.
Great to be here.
Great to have you both. So let's start with you. Well, I'm going to ask both of you, but Jamison, maybe you can go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis at PVE.
Sure. So I actually started at this firm way back in 2006 as an intern, and we were only about 5 people in a small Pittsburgh office. Currently now in New York City, and since I've seen it grow to nearly, I think we're about 200 people now with 9 offices across the country. That goes coast to coast, San Francisco to New York. Now I'm one of the owners and a principal of the firm, and this career path has obviously given me a front row seat to the hurdles and growing pains associated with not just our firm, but I think are pretty, relevant across our industry. So, one of the big things that we've seen that's kind of shaped my approach here is information sharing and operating as one unified entity just gets harder and harder as you grow, not only in people, but in locations. And that's been such a major focal point and also kind of a fulcrum of our success. So I actually started coding and doing some software development somewhere along the way. And over the past few years, we started a software and innovation division here at PVE. One of the people that lead the division now, Sean Bailey, was actually one of my coding instructors. Is how I met Alan. They were working together. I was doing an online course there, and we really collaborated well. And now he's on there, and I'm working with Alan, and we're really just building a lot of tools. And kind of the thought process is we want to create tools that fit our process instead of trying to fit our process to the tools that were available. And this has been kind of a really fruitful philosophy. It's really accelerated our growth over the past few years.
That's great. That's awesome. And Alan, maybe for our listeners, you could just tell them a little bit about your background and, how you're coming at this conversation from.
Sure. Absolutely. So I've been developing software for 15 years. I've worked across many different industries. And as Jamison started talking about, in a happenstance series of events, I was in Los Angeles and invited to speak at General Assembly, which is a sort of a coding boot camp. And it was an amazing experience. And the cohort, the students were so eager, and I'd never been introduced to that before. It inspired me. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, I created a coding boot camp, which ultimately led me to meet Jamison. That technology was ultimately, kind of evolved into what Turbine is today. So we have a very strong learning and development platform and have built numerous tools on top of it for the AEC industry, working very closely with PVE.
That's great. That's awesome. And I really like kind of the path we're going to go down here today, which is kind of Jamison, I think, summed it up well is, I think as you grow as an organization, you're going to have more needs in various areas. And if you are able to custom build some software and some tools to help you be as productive as possible in those areas, it's going to help you with your growth, as opposed to trying to utilize some kind of limited toolbox that's only available to you, whether it's like an off-the-shelf tool or something along those lines. So I think it's a great way. And it's something that we're pretty passionate about at EMI. I mean, we do a lot of custom learning and development programs for firms, right? If someone wants to do project management training, they may not want to use an off-the-shelf boot camp. They may want to use something that's very specific to their tools and their practices. We're very familiar with those types of processes. So, Jamison, with the increasing retirement rates in the AEC industry, how significant is the challenge of transferring knowledge to the next generation of engineers and architects? And what are some of the strategies that you've implemented at PVE to address this issue?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a big one. I mean, I'd say it's one of the most critical issues in our industry today. I think Alan actually told me this term that I hadn't heard, the silver tsunami. It's, for whatever reason, seems like there's just like a generation of titans within our industry that are all reaching that retirement age kind of at the same time. And they just have so many years of knowledge and experience just trapped inside their brains. And it's kind of up to us to really extract that, before they move on. And, it's pretty tough with, the current demands and just like the pace of the industry and, trying to keep up with all the projects to really find a good way to, sit down with these principals and figure out how to get that knowledge out to not just us, but kind of the generations of mentees, within our firm. So we kind of have two sides of the coin, right? We have our new hires and our younger generation that's extremely tech savvy, that's thirsty to learn. And they're the ones that are doing all the production, right? They're running around, they're trying to do all this stuff. And then we have our principals, and they're still generating a lot of the business development opportunities because they have that established name and they have all that information. But kind of the world they grew up in is not the same as the world we have today, So there is a little bit of a divide that we have to kind of figure out how to traverse. And one of the things we did here, and Turbine's been a huge assistance with this, is, how do we get that information out of the principal's head, but make sure that it's not a lot of time, not a lot of effort. And while I will hand it to, people at our firm, they're pretty tech savvy, but we're trying to also make it not so demanding where you need to learn all these new softwares or do all these new things and all these bespoke kind of tools. We're really just trying to make it as easy as possible for them. So the nice thing that we've been able to do is kind of use and leverage some of the stuff that they already have, some of their deliverables, some of their, previous projects, even some of the email strings and stuff we've done with Turbine and the AI, content assessment that we've been able to generate with Alan that's bespoke just to our firm and trained on our data. We've been able to even upload email strings between clients and just say, hey, this is a learning opportunity. Create something out of this that will kind of teach our next generation of leaders, our approach to these kind of problems. Or, hey, here's a whole bunch of different reports that we've done, help replicate our writing styles and things, and then create a course teaching the why behind it. Because I think it's like Simon Sinek that says it's, start with the why. And that's the big driving thing that our principals have is they've been in this industry so long. They have this generational knowledge, and there's things that just transfer no matter what the technology is. It's just that business savviness. It's the understanding of the industry. It's, client relations, what have you. And we're just trying to find a way that we can have a knowledge repository where that's easily accessible to everyone in our firm, but it's also easily populated by our leaders. And Turbine's been a really huge help in doing that because it takes all of our content and our knowledge and even can do transcripts of recordings or, a recording of a lunch and learn or, something that you're talking into your phone or pictures you take out in the field or anything. It can kind of aggregate that data and create learning tools and then content that's only accessible to us. Well, how we do it. And I think what really got us over the hurdle is when our leadership started to understand how easy it was to actually populate this content into our system, and then how much easier it made their lives, because suddenly, they're not getting the baseline questions, or they're not, repeating themselves over and over about training all these different things. Everyone kind of has access to that. And maybe some of the questions they're getting is from like a standpoint of, I have about 80% of the knowledge already, but I'm asking you something very specific now for your knowledge, not starting from scratch, like, hey, how do I do this? And it's been really, really great, which has freed up a lot of, capacity kind of across the board, and just made it easily accessible 24/7. And it's not kind of based off of the availability of our principals. So really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And I think just in working with a lot of AEC firms, I definitely see that knowledge transfer as such a limiting factor when it comes to, long-term growth, just because, like you said, Jamison, today they could be here, tomorrow they could not be here. And then, what goes with them in terms of, and how far does that set you back? And I can definitely see how, ease of being able to transfer that knowledge is very important. Like eliminating the friction that it might take for them to do it is going to be a huge factor in terms of actually getting them to do it.
Exactly.
And I would say one thing that's probably a big positive in that regard is, before COVID happened in 2020, I think everybody said, no civil engineering firm could operate remotely. It just doesn't work that way, right? There's plans, you got to come to the office. And of course, overnight, that was all completely dispelled. And 95% of firms were remote, like overnight. So I think that this is the same idea, and that if you can start to show people that it is possible to capture some of your knowledge in an easy way and transfer it to other people. And then like you said, Jamison, also free them up some headspace and some time, because they're getting less questions from other people. That's probably going to get the momentum rolling. And, Alan, maybe you can go into a little bit more detail on this. How does Turbine Workforce's platform really assist in the process of knowledge transfer and retention, within firms like PVE? And what are some of the features specifically that support passing this expertise from kind of seasoned professionals to, less experienced staff?
Great question. Jamison, you did a great job kind of summarizing the importance and some of what we're doing now. Speaking specifically, I would say the tool that we're most proud of, that we've seen the most use from, is something we call Vela. And it's a mobile application that you can put on the conference room table in front of the principal and hit record, and they can talk for 5 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever it might be. And that gets transcribed and put into what we call a material. Those materials are private. You can edit them. And when they're ready, you can make them available to the rest of the organization at large. At that point, they can be put into a course, which has a very specific, subject matter that you're trying to convey, to teach, to pass on to the next generation. So it's really, we completed that loop of going from, I have an idea, I'm out in the field, or I'm being deliberate and I want to do some knowledge transfer. But essentially, you don't need to go into your SharePoint. You don't need to go into Google Docs. You're not going to go into these tools in the moment when you have the idea. We have a very simple way of capturing it with your voice or manually, and having it go into a place where, when you have the time, make some edits, or have your assistant make the edits and put it into a more long form sort of teaching. And there are many other tools. I would say that having a single source of truth of where everything lives, whether it be this knowledge, these trainings you're building, or even just all the different various softwares you use in the course of a workday, having that in one place. And we have a Turbine Hub where, when an employee logs on for the day, they see the latest project, they see the latest, the news coming in from various members in the org, and all the apps they have are right there. And then they can also access, our resource repository and the various trainings that we're covering right now.
That's awesome. No, it really does sound like it facilitates the process of getting the information from kind of their brain, to the larger audience across the organization. And it's funny, I'm sure you've heard of, and maybe our listeners just have heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, a big social media influencer out there. And I've seen like a couple of videos about like the day in the life of Gary. And it's like he comes in and they kind of strap him up with videos and microphones, and like everything he says all day is captured so that they can make like, tweets with it and social media posts. And it's kind of like the same idea, right? You have something in the conference room, people are coming together, they're doing some kind of meeting, some kind of processing, all gets captured. And then that doesn't have to be repeated by them. It can go into kind of the workflow, and you can create some kind of course or some kind of knowledge piece around that. So I really think that's great, because I do think that there are so many times that we're doing our work and something goes really well, and we're like, oh man, I wish I could have captured that to be able to apply it to another project, right? So you're kind of facilitating that capture, which is awesome. And I guess another question that I would have to go a little deeper on it, and for you, Jamison, which is, as you know, in our industry, working on our types of projects, collaboration is such a huge factor in the success of the project. So I'm just curious as to, PVE has a diverse project portfolio. How has this adoption of technology kind of impacted the way that your technical professionals collaborate on projects and be productive on projects? Maybe you could talk about it at the project level.
Yeah. Well, and you were just talking about it. I mean, I'm a classic engineer myself. I put my head down. I get really excited about, successes. And it's like, okay, how do we share this success and really get that out there? We're kind of heads down a lot of the time, just because that's the nature and the demand of the industry. And this has been one of the best ways we've leveraged this tool. I mean, sad to say, as we expand the number of people within our organization and locations, becomes pretty difficult to understand all the expertise we have literally under one roof within our own firm. And kind of what Turbine has allowed us to do, and Alan, he spoke about it, the one source of truth is huge. I mean, we've really been working with them to make this bespoke to the AEC industry of how we use that and put things that are relevant kind of right out in the open for engineers and architects within a firm to collaborate. I mean, just having a company directory with all the different skill sets of what you do and the past projects that you've done across all the offices, it just allows us to have one simple query that you can just go in and say, hey, I have this project that needs this. Who should I talk to? And it's just like, hey, here's some relevant people. Oh, it's building envelope stuff. Talk to this person and this here. And then just pops up. Here's a Teams, you just click on the Teams button and it just opens a chat. And that has made collaboration, it's increased it dramatically. There's team members that are working with each other and finding each other that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. And another thing is just our projects. As we finish projects that we're proud of, our homepage right now on Turbine, it's kind of like a marketing piece. It's all internal. It's our internal landing page, but we just have a featured project from one of the teams that we're proud of. I think we rotate it weekly. And it's incredible because there's so many people that's the exposure they get to that project. I didn't know we did that. We do this kind of stuff. Who worked on that project? Cool. And you can just click right from there. It's like internal marketing, but it's so powerful because it just kind of helps kind of the internal pride of the firm too. Like, wow, we do some really cool stuff and are doing, things here, there, and everywhere. And that allows us, again, a new project opportunity comes in. Have we ever worked in Las Vegas? Have we ever done a project like this? And yep, here's the projects that have come. You're not reinventing the wheel. Here's the people that worked on them. They might have some knowledge about, oh yeah, there's some zoning things to look out for here, or there's some, here's some hurdles here. This person's worked with that building department. It's so simple, but if you don't have one source of truth where all this stuff lives, it's tough. And Alan talked about even just the softwares and tools. Boy, before this process, I can't tell you how much redundant software we used, and everyone has, their own way and method of doing it. We did an assessment where all we did was we listed all the softwares we have with a description of what they do. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We had it living somewhere, right? We uploaded it in here, and now you can just ask, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Do we have software that does that? Yes, we do. It's here. We don't need to purchase anything new. Here's the licenses that we have for it. Here's people that are knowledgeable on it. Here's the training about how to use it. Not just their docs, but this is how we use it at our firm. And that stuff has become so powerful, and the collaboration has just increased because everyone's kind of marching to the beat of the same drum, and they're just reaching out and talking to each other. And just the amount of work that we're doing now that, quite honestly, we were subcontracting out earlier just because we simply didn't know we did it. It's incredible, and it's continually growing and really expanding the opportunities we're able to capture.
That's great. That's great. So, Alan, can you share any specific tools or maybe practices or examples that have enhanced teamwork across maybe different disciplines within the firms that you work with, like PVE, and how, these tools can help AEC professionals streamline their project coordination?
Sure. Good question. I think that some of the things we've mentioned around the single source of truth is, as a sort of a paradigm shift, is the most important part. And being able to know where to go to find that information and putting the information you need in the hands of the people who need it. A lot of the examples that Jamison just mentioned we did not build them with that intention. And that's what I find the most interesting, is that Jamison and I, will have a call and he'll tell me about all the stuff he's doing. And I'm thinking, we did not build it with that intention. And it's so amazing to see how a company embraces the new platform and evolves with it and creates new ways of doing things. And then ultimately, we are so grateful to have that feedback loop, because at the end of the day, it's the best way to build software is to be informed from the people who are using it in the industry they're using it for. And so we're not out there guessing what the AEC industry needs. We're literally, building what they need based on their usage. And can you repeat the last part of the question so I can be specific and answer that one?
Yeah, sure. Just in terms of, and I know Jamison talked a little bit about it, but just in terms of project coordination, any, examples that you might have, or things that where the technology can assist in that collaboration, since there's so many different parties on these projects?
Right. So we have what we call skills inside Turbine, and skills can be attached to, when you think of a skill, it can be water drainage management, it can be CAD, it can be any sort of skill or expertise, and they can be attached to the individual, the end, like an employee. They can be attached to the project. They can be attached to courses. They can be attached to various elements within the course, like a quiz or challenge. And ultimately, when you're looking to fill that role on that project and you need that sort of expertise, you can ask Turbine in human language, who can help me with that. And you can immediately reach out to that person and see if they're available to join the team or help with that project, or just assist in that moment with something you need to complete the task or at hand.
That's great. So it's like a really smart directory, essentially, that you can create of everyone by discipline, by skill set, by background, to make it much easier to find resources, and which I would imagine becomes even more important as the firm grows, which obviously at PVE you're growing, and just general in what we're seeing in our industry is firms growing, whether it's through acquisition, which again, if now you bring 20, 30, 40, 50 people into your organization, if you can immediately get them into this directory, it's even more important, because if you're adding a new service through an acquisition,
yep,
your existing employees have no idea that exists, or that those people exist, or that they can help you on a project. So I would imagine that that's a really beneficial use for it, especially with, quick growth, fast growth.
And I think to build on that, I think that the simplest way to think about it is that it helps you identify your internal capabilities very quickly. So,
right. And that's what you have in your toolbox, right? Essentially, when you're out there talking to prospective clients, or, talking to existing clients, right? This happened to me a lot when I was practicing as a civil engineer. I might be out on a site talking to someone and they decide they need some additional environmental work. But if I don't know that we can offer it, I just lost the sale right there, right? I'm missing out I'm leaving kind of dollars on the table for our organization.
And it's totally possible that if you're given a proposal, you can put it into Turbine and ask if we have the expertise to do this proposal. And it could say yes. go talk to so-and-so in this department, or these individuals have these skill sets which are required from this proposal. That underlying infrastructure that I just described also allows you to, if you had a vacant role at your firm that you needed to fill, you can go and copy the public job posting, drop it in, and upload, candidate resumes and click analyze resumes, and it'll choose the top candidates for that open vacancy within your firm as well. So it's very powerful. Machine learning is powering the ability to draw all these connections between the information.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Anthony, you said that I literally just did this just a few days ago. Last week, I was talking to a client out on site, and I was like, they're like, hey, have you ever done work over here? And if so, like, do you guys do this stuff? While we were having the conversation, I was able to pull up my phone and just ask, because this thing is mobile, like it's a web-based application. So I was able to query it right in my pocket, come up with a few things, and during the conversation in real time, I was able to say, yeah, actually, we got this guy, he works out of our Houston office. He could do bang, bang, bang. Looks like he's done some of these projects. Is this what you're talking about? And it was just like the amount of, flow of that conversation, not, yeah, maybe I'll check or get back to you, or worse, you say, yes, of course. And find out, no, we don't.
You don't.
So it really just kind of helps in the moment like that. And I don't know, it's a very powerful tool.
That's great. No, it's super valuable. So let's talk a little bit for a minute about the business side of this. And I'll start with you, Jamison. For firms out there or professionals out there that are kind of deciding on whether or not to adopt a software like Turbine, what's that process look like? What factors are you evaluating? Take us a little bit through the thought process of you deciding to utilize a software like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we follow the industry trends and advances very closely. I'm sure we all do. We love what we do. And, we're following a bunch of different places EMI is a great resource, really, listening in on what's going on out there and what other people are doing. And us, just like any firm, we have pain points, and our whole goal is just to take actions on, working towards fixing them. We know that a lot of them aren't light switches, but we want to be at least actively moving in the positive direction, not like ignoring those areas that require attention. I'd say something that was pretty impactful. We went to an AEC specific AI conference in Boston. I think it was June earlier this year, me and a couple members of our firm. And it was just industry peers, as other principals, other leaders of firms, and Autodesk was there. A lot of the big names were there, just presenting kind of, here's the tools, here's the future, here's all the things that we're doing. And one of the takeaways that I got that I was proud to say is that I think in a lot of the key areas they said this is what your firm should be doing. I think we were doing. I think we were already at least marching down the road in that direction. Some of the big name firms with huge R&D departments, of course, they're going to be ahead of these things. But what I kind of assess from the room is that's not the norm, and they're not ahead. I think as long as you're kind of moving in these directions and really, not burying your head in the sand, we're going to be okay. We kind of like adopt these things. So that was a huge kind of takeaway from that. And a huge part of what we were doing to move in the right direction in all of these different ways was, the Turbine platform, because we were able to work with Alan and the Turbine team to really build something bespoke for our industry. Like a lot of the pain points that they had all these different tools talking about at this conference, I was like, hey, we talked about that. And we're kind of consolidating it into one kind of launching point, one kind of source of truth there. Even the little custom widgets that, we create for, automating proposals or automating some reports or things in the field, we consolidated it all into one platform. So no one needs to search for it. It's all launching from one spot. And I really think, keeping things easy, there's so many technologies out there now, and there's so many different things moving in so many different directions that it's okay. It's hard to assess everything, but kind of, hey, here's the things that we're using and that we have, and putting them all in one spot so that everyone kind of knows where to go to ask the question. What are we doing about this? And what do we have for this? And then making it easy to launch and gain that knowledge right from there. That's been huge because there's so much noise out there and it's really hard to stay up. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. So kind of simplifying it, putting it in one spot has been really, really helpful. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, this is a lot of like the internal stuff, but externally, one of the issues we have in our firm, and I'm sure many firms, is we do so much stuff because, you know, the engineering and architecture, the whole AEC industry, it just kind of, that's one nice term for a really, really broad scope of services. And marketing and advertising, no wonder our own internal people don't know all the stuff we do. It's impossible. You can't go on our website, otherwise it'd be 1,000 pages long that we need to update every day, you know? So not only kind of training our internal staff on what we do, is there a great marketing tool out there talking to clients, but if clients want to know what we do and they want to visit our website, one of the things that they've developed is actually an external little chat box or a chat bot that you can train only on your data from like a specific folder. So it's internal to you, it's bespoke, but you can then have clients go to your website and query, be like, hey, does PVE do this? Yes. Oh, and then here's a whole bunch of here's a whole bunch of resources and different things specific to a service. Like we do a lot of compliance work. You can give them resources. Yeah, we do this stuff. Here's the person to contact. Here's the thing. And, you know, you keep it to a specific folder that you want to be external facing, but that really helps too, because clients don't know where to go. They don't know if they're on the right spot. They see civil engineer, but they don't know if that means this, or this. They want to be able to kind of ask that question and find an answer quickly. So, you know, kind of flipping this tool to an external facing audience with like a small section of it that you control what the knowledge is that it's pulling from. That's really been helpful for us too, and just avoids a lot of kind of back and forth. I don't know how many times I've been out on a site where multiple consultants and our clients were like, oh, you do this too? I would have just hired you. It's like,
Right.
I mean, the driving force behind that feature Jamison mentioned, which we call turbine assistants, you can think about them as virtual subject matter experts. So the subject matter they're trained on is based on a folder. In that folder, you can put any documents you want. It has no knowledge outside those documents. So it's not going to the internet at large to answer questions. It's only based on what you tell it to. But the chief, driving force behind creating that was, how many times have you been to a website and, fill in the blank of the tech they use, but there's a little circle on the bottom right and you click it and it says, agent not online, be happy to answer your questions later. It's essentially you're paying a ton of money for a contact form. And this will answer your customers' questions at any hour, and you control the source of the knowledge answering them. You're not reliant on someone internally that might not have all the expertise to answer, customers' inquiries that are coming in. But instead, it's based on very, detailed documents that you're feeding it.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. It's exciting stuff. And as Alan talked about earlier, because you're getting the feedback from the firms you work with, you can evolve the technology as the AEC industry evolves, because you know firsthand what the organizations need, right? What their biggest needs are, and you can kind of customize things to that, which is great. And so I guess, Alan, one of the things I'll just ask you is, I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking about, the value in terms of return on investment, and how can they measure if this thing is working for them, and how can they, how do they know if it's making sense for their organization? So what can you offer up in terms of any ROI that maybe firms have observed, or an example, or anything that you can share around that?
To answer it specifically, I've heard the between 20 and 30% boost of efficiency strictly from just being able to know who does what, how to contact them, easily contact them all from one place, and then have access to the information that's crucial to do your task, to do your project all in one place, And then in addition, contribute to that knowledge base simply. So I guess that's how I would answer it as specific as I can. Thankfully, we have an industry principal on the call who could potentially maybe elaborate on any other specific ROIs.
Yeah, maybe a project example, Jamison, or something you can share with us just so that they can get a feel for it. You already gave us a few examples, but anything else you could share would be great.
Well, I'll say kind of what I mentioned it before, but I think we're just capturing a lot more business that we previously were legitimately outsourcing to subconsultants because we didn't know that we did it. And it sounds crazy to say that, but I mean, I do have a specific projects like, we do a lot of building envelope stuff here in New York City, compliance, but we do a lot of expertise, design and the detailing of building envelope stuff. Our multifamily architecture group, they do a lot of large multifamily apartment buildings. And then when it gets to the detailing of the building envelope system, they usually say delegated design and they outsource it to a building envelope consultant. We are a building envelope consultant. Like those connections were made when it was like, oh, wow, this project was up. It just started a conversation. And now all of those proposals that were going out the door are now just coming to us. So we're knocking it out. So, I mean, I guess like we're probably capturing like 30% more opportunities than we were before that we were previously outsourcing, which is, again, crazy to say, but at least we fixed the problem.
Yeah, no, it's when you put it that way, it really is kind of a no-brainer type of situation because of the amount of opportunities that come about from having the information at your fingertips, which I think is kind of just a general way we operate today. The more information we can have and the faster we can have is only going to be helpful for us, and especially in the AEC industry where you're dealing with these massive projects, and one delay on a project could cost you millions of dollars, right? So it's really probably it's not able
clients
to
want that proposal tomorrow. You know that this person does it because they've done it before, so you just go to that consultant. You don't have time. So quick and easy is key.
I think one more thing I would mention about ROI, and it's hard to place a dollar on, but I guess you could. When you're training a new hire, how much time is taken away from existing employees to assist in that training, and how much time does it take to create those trainings? So with the tools that Turbine gives you, you're constantly adding to that knowledge, which is ultimately rolled into courses that can be used during onboarding, and you standardize that entire flow, and it's kept up to date. So it's business succession planning as well, in the sense that the employees that are here today that have all the expertise that are crucial for the operations of the firm, when they leave, do you control that intellectual property once they leave? Is it captured? Does it live on past them in a way that doesn't take an enormous amount of time to kind of figure out and make it sort of put it in a format that someone can learn from? So that's hard to put a dollar amount on, but I imagine it's very high.
Yeah, for sure. No, you make a good point. There's lots of different ways that it's adding value. And if you added them all up, I think it'd be obvious as to the value. And succession planning is something that traditionally AEC firms do a very poor job at. And this can only, really help with that, which I think is one of the bigger challenges. So that's great. Well, we want to thank Jamison and Alan for spending some time with us today. We're definitely going to link up to their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes. Also, if you want to check out what their companies, PVE, you can find their website, PVE-LLC.com. You can also check out Turbine at turbineworkforce.com and learn a little bit about these organizations, what they're doing. Certainly connect with them and reach out to them. But Jamison and Alan, we really appreciate you spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering Podcast. Really great stuff, and we're glad that you shared it with us.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jamison and Alan. They're doing some really interesting stuff together that I think can be really, really valuable to firms to think about your kind of software footprint and how it can help you grow. If you want to learn more about Turbine and what they're doing in the AEC industry, you can visit turbineworkforce.com/AEC. And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel here, because we do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.